Yiboneh, Yiboneh, Yiboneh HaMikdash, Yitzion, Yitzion, Yitzion Temaneh. Yiboneh, Yiboneh, Yiboneh HaMikdash, Yitzion, Yitzion, Yitzion Temaneh. Neshama shir chadash.
Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Welcome back to the Yiboneh Beit Midrash. Welcome home to Torah. A warm welcome home to Torah. As you know, we deal with the Yakar as the basis for our discussion, and we encourage everybody to learn Hebrew. So in the description box below, you'll find a link where you can find the original Hebrew sheets. If you're interested in receiving the English source sheets that I put together, send me an email. I also want to mention that we're in the midst of our, I'm going to call it the end of the year Hanukkah fundraising drive, a campaign, and one of the things we're working on is that there is a conversion program set up by the Army. So we're talking about tefillin. Okay, the Army normally provides tefillin to the soldiers who are converting. However, they're short this year, and they needed between 15 and 20 pair. So far, we raised them enough money for 7 pair of tefillin. These are for soldiers. These are for people who have already been in combat, and they're not Jewish, and they want to convert to Judaism. And so we're going to provide them tefillin, with your help, of course. So you can also find the link below to donate. We really need to come up with another 8 pair. And it's going to be on Hanukkah, a special celebration for their finishing their conversion and entering the tribe. Okay, so let's begin. We're in Parashat Vayishlach, and the Yakar, we're actually using the Ir Giborim Sefer, written by Shlomo Ephraim Milunchitz, and he begins, the first 4 lines is a medrash. Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim. If you look in source number 1, that Yaakov sent angels ahead of him to his brother Esav into the land of Seir, the field of Edom. Now just notice, by the way, it says Arza Seir. I think we mentioned it last week or the week before. When you have a hey at the end of a word, like a noun, a place, he's going to a place. You can have a lamed before, going to the place, or you have a hey at the end of the word. And Rashi mentions that. Look in Rashi right away in source number 1. In every word that requires the prefix of a lamed to at the beginning, Scripture places a hey at the end. It's not every place, but it's every place that the hey is used. It's really like a lamed as a prefix to the word or to the place. So we see in the Medrash, Yaakov hiskin atzmo legimel dvarim. I'm sure everyone's aware that Yaakov prepared himself. He established for himself. He set up for himself 3 things. Ledoron, utefila, umilchama. Doron is gifts. He gave gifts, which we'll see shortly. He prayed for success when he's meeting Esav, his arch enemy who wants to kill him. And milchama, he set up for war. He split the camps. So just look at the verses real quick. In Genesis 32, verse 15, right? He sent gifts. It says over there, 200 she-goats and 20 he-goats and 200 ewes and 20 rams, and it goes on and on. He sent a lot of stuff. We're going to find out he also sent slaves, servants, and handmaidens. Ezim ma'atayim. That's the words he brings down. And what about tefillah? So in 32:12 in Genesis, he says, Hatzileni no miyad achi, miyad Esav. He's talking to Hashem. Deliver me now. Now deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esav, for I'm afraid of him, lest he come and strike me and strike a mother with children. We're going to deal with this verse a lot. But the Hebrew is more important. But in the meantime, we see, Hatzileni na miyad achi, miyad Esav. He prayed. And what about setting himself up for war? As it says in Genesis 32, verse 8, it says, V'yachas es ha'am. He split. He divided the people, meaning his family. Look at the verse in English. Yaakov became very frightened and distressed, so he divided the people who were with him and the flocks and the cattle and the camels into two camps. And Rashi says he was frightened lest he be killed, right? Of course, that's normal. But also, think about this. This is very interesting. This is the Jew. Now, I think her name, who was the first female prime minister of Israel? Golda Meir. I heard, I didn't hear her say it, but I heard she said that, and many people may disagree with what she said, but she said it nevertheless, that maybe I can forgive, maybe. I don't know if that means, I don't know if that's the phrase. Perhaps there's a possibility for forgiveness for them killing us, but she can never forgive them for causing us to kill them. This is very, like, look at Rashi, that Yaakov was afraid lest he be killed, and he was distressed that he might kill others. You hear? So Golda Meir didn't pull it out of thin air. There's there is something there is something to it. Perhaps. Maybe I'm reading more into it than I should. But anyway, that is where we began with the Medrash. Now, the Yakar begins in this first paragraph. I think he usually has a very humble spirit when he deals with Torah, but sometimes he has a certain, I'm not sure what word to use, a grandiose approach. And I think this is like somewhere in the middle, because he says, Kavar Malay Mizeh Kol HaSfarim. He found, in terms of explaining this, so many books have already been written, like Dea Kamayim Liyam Mechasim. So many Sfarim have been, so many books have been written, like waters covering the seabed. That, like, as knowledge is like water that covers the seabed. So much knowledge has been already revealed or discussed. Ech ha'inin talaot shahaya liYaakov v'Esav. How troubling, how the hardships that Yaakov had to endure because of Esav. Okay, and not just that, how that is going to affect us today in our present exile. We're in the exile of Esav. So he says like this, that so many things have been written regarding this, how this could be related to the hardships that Yaakov experienced with Esav, that's hinted. Al inyan hatalos asher matzinu b'derech hagalus hachalaseh. How it's actually going to even relate to the present exile. Remember we discussed, I think either last week or the week before, the concept that's called, what was it called? Ma'isa Avos Simin Labanim. What actually happened to our forefathers was a sign of things that would happen to us. And we have tradition. I mean, it wasn't just Rabbi, it was any of the great Gedolim who went and had to deal with, whether it was the Vatican, Rome, any kind of foreign adversary, perhaps on a high level, political level. They would learn these parshiot, these paragraphs that dealt with Yaakov's encounter with Esav, so that they could have some kind of insight, spiritual insight, psychological insight, in order to deal with the leaders of these other nations. And now he says, Gam Enochi, so too. So it's all written, plenty's written, I'm going to add. And he says, Gam Enochi lo echshoch pi milahosif aleim. My mouth is not darkened, which means I am enlightened. But he doesn't use I'm enlightened, he says, my mouth is not darkened from adding onto this idea. And so he says, Riti techila levayir inyan haparasha al derech ha'avar lefi pshuta. Therefore, how he begins, and remember, this is like a 20-page essay. We're only going to deal with maybe 2.25 pages. So maybe next year, hopefully, and the year after, we'll continue. But he basically says, I see to begin to explain the parsha, these paragraphs, just as passing through according to the most simplest meaning. We call derech pshuta, the fi pshuta. And afterwards, and only afterwards, he's going to reveal to us nitziv tzionim v'simanim shel banim min ha'inyanim me'elu. Then he will stand up and show us the markers, right? That's what the Jewish people are. We are the markers. That's what Zion is. We are the Zionists, right? The real Zionists, the real Zionim, the real markers for the world. And that's going to be a siman from our forefathers to us, how we need to deal in exile. So he begins, Ubederach hapshat nira. As he said, I'm going to give you simple pshat. Now for us, we're going to say, we've read this 100 times and never saw this. Well, maybe we did, parts of it. He says, Ki yadush lifamim hachai nikshav kemet. There are times, it's well known, there are times that a living person is considered dead. Okay, a living person can be considered dead. V'hu bizman shehu ne'edar min ha'toivois shel ha'olam hazeh. When is that? When the person is lacking, it's absent from him, any of the good stuff of Olam Hazeh. We are in this world. Olam Hazeh is this world. The world to come, obviously, is going to be bliss. But in this world, if we have no enjoyment from this world, if one has no enjoyment from this world, hu kroi met, considered or called dead. And we have a few verses to prove this idea. Ke'inyan shama Rivka. When Rivka found out, right, that her son is of marriageable age, I mean, she, watched him grow up, and she already knows that Esav took Canaanite wives. I don't think she was too happy about that, but it was Esav. There was no way this Jewish mother, was going to let her son Yaakov marry Canaanite women. What does she say in Genesis 27:47 and 46? It's number 5 on the source sheet. The last words are underlined. Of what use is life to me? But what is she referring to? She's almost like I'm dead. Right? She said, Rebecca said to Isaac, I'm disgusted with my life because of the daughters of Chet. Yeah? She cannot stand what she's about to say. If Yaakov takes a wife of the daughters of Chet like these, from the daughters of the land of Canaan, of what use is life to me? Lama li chayim. Lama li chayim. So, a Jewish mother. And what is it about Canaan that she was not interested in her son Yaakov marrying? So in Genesis chapter 9, verse 25, this is earlier on, and he said, Cursed be Canaan, he shall be a slave among slaves to his brethren. V'yomer arur Canaan, eved avadim yilachav. So cursed is Canaan. The word arur, cursed is Canaan. And he shall be a slave to slaves. That's pretty low. Slave to, not just a slave to slaves. Just remember, it was a double language. What does that mean? We're going to discuss. He will be to his brothers. Look at Rashi on that, bottom of page 1. Cursed be Canaan. So this is like Noah had experienced either castration or sodomize, but according to many it was castration. Now who did it? It seems like it was Ham. But Ham wasn't cursed, Canaan was cursed. Why was Ham not cursed if he's the one that afflicted his father in such a horrible way? Because God already blessed those who came off the ark. When they left the ark, he blessed them. So later, when this incident takes place, if Ham did it, God cannot curse Ham because he just cursed. He just blessed him. So, assuming that it was Ham, what did he do? You've caused me, look at Rashi, you've caused me to be incapable of begetting another fourth son. In other words, if there are 3 sons, which there were, Ham, Yafet, and Shem, if there's a fourth son, they don't get a third of inheritance, they get a quarter of inheritance. It's a loss. So that could be one reason. Another, just from Noah's point of view, a son to help serve him. But let's just look at the Rashi itself. Cursed be Canaan, you have caused me to be incapable of begetting another fourth son to serve me. Meaning, cursed be your fourth son. that he should minister. I mean, Canaan basically was the fourth son because he didn't go on the ark, but he came off the ark. So, which means he was actually, what's the word I'm looking for? Conceived and born on the ark. And we have a tradition that while God's world is being destroyed during the flood, it was wrong, it was forbidden for mankind to have this enjoyment and cohabitate, and therefore it was wrong. But we see that's where he came from. So he's the fourth son, so to speak. He already had three sons, and he had the first grandson. Okay, so he was born on the ark. So based on Rashi, that he says he would be the fourth son should be cursed, so that he should minister to the children, to the older ones, Shem and Yafes. Again, it's interesting because we're talking about Canaan being cursed, serving the other brothers, the older brothers, Shem and Yafes, upon whom the burden of serving me, meaning Noach, had been placed from now on. Just a quick, see the second part of the Rashi. What did Ham see, or what reason did he have, that he castrated his father Noach? He said to his brothers, hey, look back at the first man, Adam. Adam had two sons, and one killed the other so as to inherit the world. Our father already has three sons, and he still desires to have a fourth, so that would be a motivation for the castration. Okay, let's go back into the Yakar. And he ended up, the last thing he gave us was the verse about Arur Kanan Eved Avadim Yelachiv. Valderk Shamar. Now this is going to be, the whole thesis is based on this idea. We said that some people who are alive are considered dead. Who are they? So there's actually a Gemara in Nedarim. If you look on the source sheet on page 2, source number 7. Right, Chaim? Source number 7. I underlined it. The Gemara actually says there are 4 who are considered as if they are dead. Who are these 4 people? A pauper, we'll call them an ani, someone who is impoverished. A leper, someone who is a mitzora, someone who has affliction all over his body. And a summa, a blind person. And the 4th, which we're not going to discuss, is one who has no children. That's pretty redeemable because even if you don't have children, it's not a great situation, but it is what it is. You get what you get. And if you have students, your students are your children. So if you don't merit to actually have children, you could merit to have students. Why not? So there are different verses. We'll go through them very quickly. In Exodus chapter 4:19, it's in source number 7, where Moses was told, now you're going to go back to Egypt. You can go back to Egypt. All the people that were chasing you before, they're dead. Very interesting idea, because were they really dead? I have here in front of me, Rashi says they weren't dead, they were impoverished. And if you're impoverished, it's as if you're dead. I'm just going to read the comment in the art scroll on that one statement. It says, why did God add this command in Midian, meaning to go back to Egypt, that it was not already included in the earlier command when he was at Mount Chorev? Moses was planning to go to Egypt alone and in disguise to avoid being recognized as a wanted killer. Remember, he was accused of murder, right? He put the guy out by using the name of Hashem, buried him in the sand. Therefore, God told him now that such precautions were unnecessary because his enemies were dead. For as Rashi points out, had been reduced to poverty and were so inconsequential that they were as good as dead. So Moses heard that, and he took his wife and his children. He had confidence now that he could be the true leader and take the Jews out of slavery, bondage. It's going back into the Yakar. Again, the last thing we mentioned was this medrash. I don't think we went through the whole medrash. Basically, that was the first, okay? That if you're impoverished, you're dead. You're like you're dead. A leper, remember where Moses prays for his sister Miriam, who had leprosy? It says in Numbers chapter 12, verse 12, let her not, I pray, be as one dead. In other words, being a leper is ki'ilu, as if one is dead. And a blind person, how is that like being dead? In Lamentations 3 verse 6. Lamentations is what? Eicha, right? It says, he has made me to dwell in dark places as those that have been long dead. So this is referring to dark places, i.e. could not see. And the last one is about children. In Genesis chapter 30 verse 1, give me children or else I am dead. So in chapter 30 of Genesis verse 1, it was Rachel. Rachel saw that she had not borne children to Yaakov, so Rachel became envious of her sister. She says to her husband, she says to Yaakov, give me children, otherwise I am dead. So you see that being childless, it's ki'ilu, it's as if, it's like being dead. So we're not going to discuss that last thing. We're going to discuss these three things. Impoverished, being blind, and being afflicted as a leper. These things are basically we're focusing on being like you're dead. Ratzo b'zeh. So what does the Kliyakar want to explain? Or what is he saying that the Medrash in Nedarim is talking about? Shebizman ha'adam nilka o begufo o b'mamono o b'torato. It doesn't say it. It just says impoverished, blind, or a leper. But he says it's deeper than that. There's layers and layers. So these are referring to being afflicted on the body level, if you want to write it down, body, or your money, or your Torah. Nobody wants to be afflicted in any one of those three things, but if you are, that's not a good thing. It's like you're dead. Shegimel elu kololim kol hatzlachat anushi. You got to be sitting down for this. That these three things, they are all inclusive, or they include all personal success. You want success, you don't want to be blind, bodily afflicted, or let's say like this, you don't want your body, you don't want your money, or you don't want your Torah to be afflicted. Okay, ubizmanshu nilka behem, and this is the last line on the right side, at a time where you are afflicted with them, as hu koyren meis. So we saw in the Gemara, in Nedarim, you're considered dead. By the way, it's Nedarim, page 64b. We're on the top left. V'zeh amru ani hainu b'mamono. Remember, when it speaks about being afflicted in poverty, it's talking about money. Mitzora, when you're afflicted with this particular spiritually skin disease, it's referring to your body, a leper. And what about a summa? That's going to be hard to explain. I think not hard, but let's just say it's not so intuitive. Why would a summa, a blind person, be afflicted on a Torah level? And he brings down, since by evil people. Now, the truth is, I don't really see this having to do with evil people. This verse is actually seemingly referring to idols. We say it every day. This is in Psalms 115:5, number 8 on the source sheet. It says regarding idols, anyway, they have a mouth, but they do not speak. And then underline, they have eyes, but they do not see. So the evil people, unfortunately, we're talking about a spiritual level, being blind, spiritually blind. Correct? So they have eyes, but they do not see. In Hebrew, einayim lehem v'lo yiru. So they don't see. Now, how do we know something about evil people, even though that's talking about idols? So he brings us to the next verse, Isaiah chapter 5, verse 12. I know it's a typo here, but it's chapter 5, verse 12. And it says over there, the latter part, they have not seen. What does it mean? Start from the beginning. There are harp and lute, tambourine and flute, and wine at their drinking feast. And the work, this is like underline, and the work of the Lord they do not regard. They're not concerned with spiritual things. They're not interested in what the Lord has to say. And the deed of his hands they have not seen. Meaning their eyes are closed to the deeds of God. They have not seen. In Hebrew, vet poel Hashem lo yabitu maaseh yadav lo ru'u. They do not see. And it's so interesting in Psalms 119:18, it's kind of like the other way around. What are we praying for? What should we be praying for? What should we want? What should we be yearning for? To uncover my eyes, gal einai. right? To uncover my eyes, this is Psalms 119, verse 18, that I should look at the hidden things from your Torah, right? It's a beautiful verse. And Rashi says on that, hidden things. What does it mean, hidden things from your Torah? The hidden things that are in it. Now we're in Kislev, and I mentioned in the beginning, we gave a shir on Kislev in the very beginning, that there are 36 special lights that God created, what we call in the beginning this, I'm going to call it a supernal light, that He hid in the Torah. Right? We light 36 mitzvah candles on Hanukkah. There are 36 volumes of Talmud. Right? 36 is a very special number, but we're not going to get into that. We spoke about that already. But this idea that uncover my eyes during Kislev, we want to see the light. Okay? We have to do things to uncover our eyes. We shouldn't be blind. So that Rashi says, hidden things that in it, which is the Torah, which are not explained. The Torah is full of mystery and hidden secrets. That's why you need a rabbi. That's why you come into the class. That's why you study Torah. From your Torah, wonders from the explanation of your Torah which are not explained therein. Not everything is explicit in the Torah. That's why you need all the way back 3 million of us witnessed, heard God speak, and transmitted it from generation to generation. And that's what we're doing here tonight, to hear the truth. Going back into the Yakar, so he gave us all these different verses, and he says, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines down on the left side. Kanan nitkalel b'kolelu. Kanan, right, this nation that was living here at the time, they were cursed with all 3 of these things. Kulan nirmazu ba'amru. And they're all hinted at within that verse. Cursed is Canaan, who will be slaves of slaves. So right away the Yakar says, remember it says slaves twice, slaves of slaves. Why don't you just say lowly slaves? They're slaves of slaves, so slaves is mentioned twice. And he says, Hisker shnei minei avdus. It mentions 2 types of slavery. Number 1, ki echad meramez al shenikla b'mamono. The first type of hit or affliction with slavery comes with the absence, lack of money, becoming impoverished. Every slave, if you have money, you're going to get out of slavery, right? Shebizman hayoto evid az ma shekona evid kona rabo. Once you're in that position where you've been impoverished, and now, if you were walking down the street and you found a bar of gold, guess who it belongs to? Your owner. Your property is not your property anymore. Whatever you find, whatever you acquire, your owner acquires. So that's pretty impoverished. Because he says, Ein lo chelek v'nachala b'kol asher lo. He has no portion or even inheritance to anything which could be considered his. That's in Gemara. It says in Gemara Pesachim Peichet. It's also in Kedushin 23b. And what about the second type of slavery? We did discuss last week or the week before about the word charut ala luchot. Right? Charut means engraved on the tablets. That word charut is spelled almost exactly the same. It's just the vowelization different. Cherus. You find freedom through the law. The word charut means engraved on the tablets, the luchot of the tablets. And the Chazal tells, don't read it as charut. Engraved, but freedom. Freedom. You find freedom through the law. And that's what the second part is about. The avdus hashenin merames shenilka b'torato. The second type of slavery or enslavement is hinted at by the idea that he's afflicted in his Torah. Shahalomda hu ben chorin. Because the one who studies Torah, Scripture, is free. She's the real free person. Al davar cherus ala luchos, like we just explained, of the freedom coming from the engravement of the luchos themselves. V'nilcha be'avdus, and that person is afflicted with servitude. Ramashu nedar mimena, because he's empty from it. What is he empty from? Torah. V'nilcha b'tzaras. Now let's talk about the second idea, or the third idea, that tzaras, you're afflicted in your body. And how do we know? It's all coming from the same, right? We already said that there's two avdus, which is money and Torah. What about the tzaras? Inside that cursed is Canaan is a third idea, because it's written in Vayikra, it's Leviticus chapter 13, verse 52. Look at number 12 on the source sheet. This is talking about tzaras. The tzaras is called malignant. Now that's just in English. I don't know what malignant means other than it's cancerous and it's dangerous and it's spreading. I really should have looked up the word, but we know that it's bad. Well, guess what? In Hebrew, the actual Hebrew word is cursed. Look what it says. And he shall burn the garment, the warp and the woof, threads of wool or linen, or any leather article which has a lesion upon it. So leprosy does not just afflict the skin. It's on the skin, or it's on the clothing, or it's on the walls of the home. Well, when it's on the clothing, you have to burn the clothing. And it says in English, for it is a malignant sarat, and it shall be burned in fire. But in Hebrew it says, ki tzarat mam'eret hi. It's cursed. The root of cursed. So now we understand there is a connection. As we were saying, that cursed is Canaan and cursed is Tzaras. So there's a link there. Remember what Rivka said? She said, Im lokeach mi banot Canaan. If my son Yaakov is going to take a wife from the daughters of Canaan, well, then what life is there? I might as well be dead. Hanitkala b'gimel elu. That the nation of Canaan is cursed with these three things. Shemitzad shaloshtan adam chashuv kamet. From the idea that if a person is afflicted with these three things, he's considered like he's dead. Im kain lama li chayim. And she said, if that's the case, what kind of life can I have? Gam Esav, even Esav, who already married Canaanite women, he finally figured it out. And from that point on, he only married daughters from Ishmael. So, Gam Esav ro'o ki ra'ut benot Canaan. He saw himself the evil in the daughters of Canaan. The Hevan shemitzad gimel elu hamidbakbo. He saw these three character traits clinging to these women, and therefore, what would be the result? Hare zaro chashuv kamet. Then his own seed would be considered like that. He figured it out. Lefichach. Therefore, it says in Genesis 28, verse 9, which is number 13 on the source sheet, it says Esav went to Yishmael, and at the end, in addition, he took wives in addition to his other wives as a wife. In Hebrew, Vayelech Esav el Yishmael, and he took Maharal bat Yishmael ben Abraham achot niviot as additional wives. Ulefikach, the parsha zu hatza'ata inyan. Therefore, according to the Yakar, this parsha supports his suggestions, his proposal. Ki Yaakov haya mitpached al kol panim sheyikayem Esav amru ve'harga et achi Yaakov. So Yaakov himself was frightened. He was afraid that perhaps would be fulfilled Esav's own words. Esav said, I'm going to kill my brother Yaakov. Now, when we're talking about you're considered dead if you're afflicted by any of these three things. So you can imagine the Yakar is going to say, this is what Esav wanted to do. He wanted to afflict him with these three things. Number one could be just to kill him outright. Begufo. Perhaps I skipped something. So it's very possible that he could fulfill, according to Yaakov's fear, he might be able to kill him in one of these three ways. One is begufo, literally mamish, killing him physically. Lahargo mamish, to actually kill him. O lasot bo ptziim v'chaburot ad sheyeh nichshav kamet. Or he would do into him wounds. I'm not sure the difference between Petzia and Chabura, but basically one wound might be worse than the other or less than the other, but they're types of wounds until he's considered dead. You ever hear somebody who's so beat up? I mean, so, I don't even want to think about it, but either he kills him mamish or he wounds him to the point that he's on the brink of death. Okay, so that's one. What about if he took his money? What if he took his money? Oh, shiyitu kol mamono lahakshivo kemet. Maybe, Yaakov's afraid. Maybe he's going to try to take all my money. And he'll be considered like dead, because we said that a pauper is like dead. And what do we know as a fact? That Esav sent his son Eliphaz to kill Yaakov. Now, Yaakov was probably his favorite uncle, maybe his only uncle, but nevertheless. And he grew up with Yitzhak, of his grandfather. How can he do this to his own grandfather, to kill his other, the son of Yitzhak? But Esav sends him on the way. You got to kill my brother Yaakov. So what does Eliphaz do? He approaches him. He says, "Listen, I really don't want to kill you. I'm stuck. I'm in a pickle. I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. I have mitzvah kibbut av v'aim. Obviously, if your parents ever tell you to violate the Torah, you don't. But he told me to kill you. He has whatever justification, and I don't want to kill you." So Yaakov says to him, "Take all my money. If you take all my money, I'll be considered like dead, and then you go back to your father and tell him you killed me. And you're not lying, because I'm like met, I'm like death." That's what he says. Kamosha osa Eliphaz ben Esav, sheradav acharav b'mitzvot aviv. That Eliphaz was fulfilling, he chased after Eliphaz, the son of Esav, chased after Yaakov in order to kill him because it was father's command. Lahorgo lefi shegodo b'chaiko, but because even though he told him to kill him, but since he grew up in his bosom, so to speak, whether it was Yaakov as the favorite uncle or Yitzhak as the grandfather that loved his son Yaakov, Mashach Yadov, he withdrew his hand. He took all of his money, again, commit, to fulfill the command of his father, which was to kill Yaakov. But obviously, he didn't physically kill him. He took all his money. He came back and said, "Dad, I killed him." And Yaakov himself says, "This is all I had was my staff." And that infers that he had lost everything except for his staff. That's all he had. And what about the Torah? Oshiyavo Esav levatel mimenu Torah mitzvah. Yeah, so the third way of possibly killing Esav, killing Yaakov, was to wipe out, nullify the Torah that Yaakov himself learned and built up over the years, and then he would be considered kames, like a dead person. Ulazamar Yaakov. Now think about what Yaakov said. Now this is going to be a little complicated. Amar Yaakov in chapter 32, verse 12, which we'll find back in source number 4. I think it's 3 actually. In source 3. "Now deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esav. I am afraid of him, lest he come and strike me, and strike a mother with children." He doesn't say, "and strike me," although it sounds like he does, because when he says strike me, what is he talking about? And what does he mention? A mother with children. The Yakar says like this. He right away says, "Lo hiskir atzmo." And I see, well, he does talk about himself. He says, "And I am fearful." And he also says, "Lest he strike me." But the Yakar says he's not referring to himself, but rather he's hinting that the fear is that he's going to take my Torah away. This is the way the Yakar is reading it. He's saying, not that he doesn't mention himself, but he's not referring to himself. He's referring to the Torah that he's trying to take away from me. And how does he prove it? Because he says, when the words say, "Pen yavo v'hikani," what's the next word? Aim. Mother. But aim and im is the same letter. Im with aleph mem, and aim with aleph mem is mother. So he's almost doing a play on the word. because if he's afraid lest he comes and strikes aim, mother, my Torah. We're going to see the word mother, or im, even with aleph mem as im, is still as in Proverbs chapter 2 verse 3, which is Numbers 15. We're already on page 3. If you call for understanding, now this paragraph is dealing with wisdom, it's dealing with the Torah. And it says, Ki im labina tikra. Im labina. It's like only if you call. Bina, which is really understanding. It's talking about the Torah. And raise your voice for discernment. Litvuna titen kolecha. Now, remember, aim is what we're looking at, or im is what we're looking at. And look at the next verse in Proverbs 1:8. Does he take us there right away? Yeah. So in Proverbs chapter 1 verse 8, it says specifically, Al titosh Torat imecha. Do not forsake the instruction, the Torah of your mother. So this, by the way, hearken my son to the discipline of your father. That is going to be Shma beni Musar avicha. We could be the written Torah. The father is, let's say, less flexible, more concrete. The written word is concrete and there's no flexibility. But the oral Torah is like the mother, the instructions coming from your mother, which we know that the oral Torah is alive, it's viable, and it's constantly changing in terms of the language. The principles are the same, but each generation is obligated to teach to the next generation. It's like they call a generation gap. If it was just written without oral instruction, it would be It would be old-fashioned by 2-3 generations. We have radios, we have Shabbos elevators, we have cars on Shabbos. We have to talk about it. They didn't have that then. So the whole idea of the oral Torah being flexible, meaning flexible not in principle, the principles are the same. But when Joshua heard what he heard from Moshe, first of all, Moses did not tell over to Joshua word for word. He told him in a way that Joshua can understand, and Joshua told the next generation in a way they can understand, and every generation needs to be able to explain the Torah in the way that generation, the future generation, can understand. So that's what it means. Don't abandon the Torah of your mother. Okay, so what the Yakar just did, he jumped from aim al banim, in original chapter 32 verse 12, that he was hit me with the Torah, which is then related to the children. And it says he didn't mention himself, but rather he hinted to the idea that he was afraid that Esav was going to try to get the Torah away from him. And we read 2 verses, one Mishlei, Proverbs 2 verse 3, the other one Proverbs 1 verse 8, relating to the word im or aim, to your mother. And then he says, al banim, it's referring to the children, meaning the Toldos. Who are our children? Our children really, like by Noach, it says, and these are the children of Noach, and then it says about his character. Rashi says, what are the Toldos of the righteous? It's your good actions, it's your Shem Tov, it's your good name, it's your Maisim Tovim, it's the mitzvahs that you do or have done. And that's what he says. And God forbid if you don't have that, well, let's just read what he says. Hainu Toldos shel tzadikim Maisim Tovim. It's the product of the righteous people. What's the product? Their good deeds. She'amar pen yavo. And he was afraid lest he come. And if he came and got rid of my Torah, then what would be left? As it says in Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 17, perhaps there's among you a man, a woman, a family, or a tribe whose heart strays. Without Torah, your heart will stray. This day from the Lord our God, to go and worship the deities of those nations. Perhaps there's among you a root. In Hebrew, root is a shorish that produces, let's just say, fungus and rot in the tree. So it's really an idea of, God forbid, if the root is bad, then all the branches that stem out of the tree is also going to be bad. So that would be the result. If he lost the Torah, there would only be negative things in the future for his children. And then he says, we're 4 lines up from the bottom of that paragraph on the right. He says, V'zesh Amar. This is what it says. When Yaakov says, it's in Genesis 32, verse 13, look number 18. Yaakov is saying to God, you said, God, I will surely do good with you. V'ata amarta, heitiv eitiv imach. I am certainly going to do good with you. This was God's promise to the Jewish people. That was God's promise to Yaakov. So the last line is, Ein toiv ela leolam shekulu tov. The real good is the world to come, the world that's waiting for us. Remember how we started? If you don't have any pleasure in this world, you're like dead. We're actually pleasure seekers. God created us. We all know we love pleasure, right? Who doesn't love pleasure? But we have to choose between what we call real pleasure and counterfeit pleasure, right? Shrimp, lobster, non-kosher meat, that's counterfeit pleasure. Lamborghinis, right? Unless you're using it for some good purpose. But there's a lot of counterfeit pleasures in this world. We have a choice to go for the kosher one, but we still get pleasure. We are pleasure seekers. So Rav Noach Weinberg gave this great seminar called The 5 Levels of Pleasure. And of course, Dveikus Hashem and different levels of meaning brings us pleasure, right? Love, relationships, these are meaning. These things bring us pleasure. And you have to choose. Am I going to go save the whales, or am I going to try to save the Jews, right? From the river to the sea, Israel will be free, right? Something like that. Okay, so he says, where would I ever get any kind of enjoyment from this world, if Esav would take away from me, would negate from me my Torah? Regarding these 3 things, Yaakov was afraid. He was afraid of losing these 3 things, or succumbing to the afflictions of these 3 things, that he sent him the first message. The first message, look in 32 verse 5, which is number 19 on the source sheet. And he commanded them, saying, meaning he commanded the angels, saying, so shall you say to my master, to Esav, thus says your servant Jacob, I have sojourned with Lavan, and I have tarried until now. In Hebrew, im Lavan garti, v'acher ad ota. Very important. The word garti means I live with, but he could have used other words. The Torah could have used other words. To Yoshev, right? All kinds of words could have been used, but he used specifically the word garti. Garti, Rashi points out, is a gematria. It's not just a gematria, it's the same letters as taryag. Why do we use the word taryag for the 613 mitzvahs? Because of the gematria. But specifically, he used the word garti. He's saying, I kept the Torah with this Russia. All the odds were against me. So, you know what I mean? Lavan was a scoundrel. And his name, Mr. White, right? Mr. White. You know, all those commercials for those toilet cleaners, or the drain cleaners, or whatever, the cleaning supplies. They got Mr. White. He's going to get scrubbed away. Or I think of the Dukas of Hazzard. I don't know if you all remember that. But the mayor, the corrupt mayor, he all got dressed all in white. But anyway, it's very funny that Lavan, his name is Mr. White. That's what his name is, Mr. White. So Yaakov's coming back, and look what he says. Look at Rashi explains it. So the first idea is that I didn't become very important. I was just a ger. I was just a stranger. Because you got to understand, Esav was upset that Yaakov stole the blessings, and Yaakov was coming back and saying, they had no effect on me. You have nothing to be upset about. Your blessing was you be a great leader. I wasn't a great leader. I was just a regular guy. Right? Not worthwhile for you to hate me on account of your father's blessing, which you think I got. Remember, one of the blessings is you will be a master of your brothers. Well, I was just a regular guy, and it didn't really have an effect. But this is a little bit of deception. Even the word Yaakov means to deceive. We're not going to get into that now, but the most important explanation is the next part of that Rashi in number 19. It's underlined. Another explanation, the word Garti has the numerical value of 613. That's why we call them the Taryag mitzvot. I lived with the wicked Lavan, but I kept the commandments, I kept the Torah, and I didn't learn from his evil deeds. In other words, it had no effect. I wasn't damaged by my association with Lavan, and what he's trying to say is, it ain't going to happen with you either. I'm going to be, you're not going to steal my Torah. I already went through the trials and tribulations of being tricked left and right and center many times over, and I didn't lose my Torah. You're not going to do it either. Let's see how Yakar explains it. We're in the last two lines on the right side, on page 87, Pei Zion. The first message that Yaakov sends to Esav is Im Lavan Garti, and this hints Ramaz lo sha'afa pisha Lavan Rasha, that even though Lavan was evil, haya v'haya le'el yado la'asosimo ra b'gimel dvarim elu, that even though Lavan had the power to do with me all these three things, afal pikein lo haziku, nevertheless Yaakov came out unscathed, not damaged. And this is what he means when he says, Im Lavan Garti, Taryag Mitzvah Shamarti. As Rashi says, I kept all the 613, I kept the Torah. Hareish lo ziku b'Torato. It didn't affect my Torah, it didn't affect the Torah. And what was the next message he sent to him in verse 6? He said to him, V'hoyali shur v'chamor. Remember, this is all related to the Torah. When he says, I had, now the way we speak, the more you have, right, if up until 10, let's say shekels. If I have up until 10 shekels, I'm going to say the word shekels. Chamishach shkalim. Shkalim. But once I get past number 10, it becomes singular. Chadasrei shekel. Okay, that's the norm. So when he said, I have donkey, where is it? See, I don't know why they translated donkeys, but it says, I've acquired oxen and donkeys. That's the English translation. But in Hebrew, I have acquired an ox and a donkey. Right? Look at the Hebrew. He says, V'hayali shur v'chamor. But it does mean plural. I get why they translate that way. It's not a problem. But I just wanted you to see that. So, what is it about a shor and a chamor? A shor is a hint to Yosef. Yosef is referred to in the bracha by Moshe at the end of his life. At the end of Moshe's life, he blesses Yosef as a shor. And the chamor is Yisachar. By Yaakov is blessing Yisachar as a donkey, and we'll see why. So what he was saying is that he sent him the shor and the chamor to show, I got the Torah, and you're not going to take it from me. Listen to the Yakar. We're 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down. So he said, Vahili shor v'chamor, I have ox and I have donkey. Gemor Vodazara, page 5b, Leolam Yasim Atzmo al Divrei Torah, Kashor La'ol, V'chamor L'masoi. Look in number 21 on the source sheet. And it's really towards the very land. Let's go to the next page, number 4. At the top of the page, I underlined it. I just want to get to the point. The school of Eliyahu taught a person should always make himself subjugated to matters of Torah, like an ox to a yoke, and like a donkey to a burden. Okay, so that's the statement over there. Now you could try to imagine coming to a shir where you're the first one there. Try to imagine going to daven where you're the guy that opens the door. Try to think that this is like not a burden, but a pleasure to serve, right? That you take the take an ox and he puts his head into that yoke. That's how we should be with Torah, right? That's who we are. Mamlechet Kohanim. We're an Goy Kadosh. We're a holy nation and a nation of priests. We should want to serve. Okay. Just to show you in number 22 and 23, in Genesis 49:14, Yisachar is a strong-boned donkey. Rashi says he bears the yoke of Torah like a strong donkey. We'll see why. Because he was Bina Litim. Yisachar had a special knack. They were really big scholars, and they knew how to advise the Jewish people about timing, when to go to war, when to invest, or whatever, business-wise. Anything to do with Torah and knowledge. And in number 23, in Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 17, this was Moses' blessing to whom? To Yosef, to his firstborn ox, Bechor Shoro, Hadalo, is his glory given. And he will gore peoples together, as it says. Just while we're there, in 1 Chronicles chapter 12, verse 32, and the sons of Yisachar, those who had an understanding of the times, to know what Israel should do. They were advising the Jews how to not just interpret the Torah, but how to apply it when it came to times. Their chiefs were 200, and all their brethren obeyed their word. Go back into the Yakar. The last thing we said was Shor v'chamor. Leolam, that he says in Gemara Avodah Zarah. A person should always place upon themselves the words of Torah like a ox going into the yoke and like a donkey carrying a burden. Therefore, Lefi Kara Yaakov LeYosef Shor. The truth is, it was Moses that called Yaakov the shore, Yisachar Chamor, and Yaakov did call to the tribe of Yisachar as a donkey. Lefi she'elu haya melomdim yosim mishar achim. These two brothers learned Torah more than all the other brothers. We already saw by Yisachar. The quote is from Divrei Yami, 1 Chronicles chapter 12, verse 32, where it says, B'nei Yisachar yidua bina liitim. The only way they could actually teach and instruct is because they knew more Torah. And Yosef, it says in Breshit Rabbah, in the Medrash, Shekoma shelamed Yaakov mibayit shem ve'eder moser liYosef. All the Torah that Yosef, that Yaakov had learned. Remember, he spent 14 years in where? In Beersheba, in the yeshiva of Shem and Aver. All that Torah that he learned, he specifically gave it over to one of his sons. I'm not saying he didn't learn Torah with the others, but he learned specifically, of course, during the first 17 years anyway, of Yosef's life, until unfortunately that he was sold. But, huh?
You said one of his sons.
No, it was Yaakov. It says here, Kol ma shelamed Yaakov mi beit Shem ve'ever masir Yosef. He gave it over to Yosef. We said that these two sons, these two tribal leaders, they learned the most Torah, or let's say the tribes learned the most Torah. And we saw already by Yisachar, there's something unique and special about their relationship with Torah, Bina Le'itim, and by, according to the Medrash, that Yosef is the one that got the full brunt of the Torah learning that Yaakov had learned in the yeshiva. It's very interesting because we're going to come across this again towards the end, that this hints that Yaakov, when he left Lavan's house, he was shalem. He was perfectly complete with his Torah. So that's Torah. What about his money? He was afraid that Esav was going to afflict him with money issues, become impoverished. Well, he sent them the message, the third message. He said, Son ve'eved v'shivcha. So in verse 6, which we already read, verse 6, where is it? It was maybe. It's number 20 on the source sheet. I have acquired ox and donkey, flocks, manservants and maidservants, that I have sent to tell this to my master to find favor in my eyes. What is it about the fact that he sent flocks, manservant and maidservant? It says in Gemara Chulin, Lamin Nikrutson Ashtarot. It is true, there's a pasuk that mentions that the flock are called Ashtarot. We find this in Deuteronomy somewhere, but basically Ashtarot are what we call flocks. Why are they called Ashtarot? Lefisham Asharot es Balehem. According to the Gemara, that causes the owners of flocks to become wealthy. What a great idea. But, if you're having some financial problems, become a shepherd and you'll be rich. I think it means that either it was a good occupation. It could be. In other words, there's certain times of the years you're going to sell a lot, like before Pesach, maybe for the other Hagim, you'll sell a lot of sheep. Maybe just in general, it's a good business. But I think, based on the idea that if you give maaser, you will become rich. You're allowed to test Hashem. There's such a thing called maaser behema. You also have to maaser, tithe your animals. So this could be an opportunity to expand your opportunity to give. That could be. But anyway, the Gemara in Chulin definitely says that they're called Ashtarot because they cause, so when he sent his flocks by him, right, that it was to show him that he did not get affected by the money. And what about the women, the manservants and the female servants? It says in Gemara Shabbos, who's considered rich? Mishi yeshlo kuf sados v'kuf avadim. Someone who has 100 fields and 100 servants who can work those fields. I looked the Gemara up, and the Meforshim seemed to explain, so I wanted to know what was the secret about 100. It seems like it's an aguzma, some type of exaggeration. It probably just means if you have a lot of servants and fields, you're good to go, you're considered rich. Okay, what about his body? His body, he wanted to show, I wasn't afflicted either. So he does say, Acher adata, I was delayed until now. Right, all part of verse 6. Nit akvati imo, v'garti imo b'shalom. When he says, I delayed until now, he's trying to say, I lived with him in peace. This evil person, I somehow was able to work it out and got along with him, but it was something called peace. Like it says in Isaiah in the future, when Mashiach comes, and we're looking forward to that day. He obviously did not come yet because the lamb does not lie down with the wolf, as it says in Isaiah chapter 11, verse 6. Where is it on the source sheet? Number 28. And the wolf shall live with the lamb, and a leopard shall lie with a kid, and a calf and a lion cub, and the fatling shall lie together, and a small child shall lead them. In Hebrew, v'ger za'ev im kevis. Okay, so far so good. He's saying, I lived in peace. And so therefore, as the verse ended, he sent this message in order to try to tell his adversary that, Esav, you should find favor in your eyes for me, right? Find favor. He doesn't want to become damaged in any of these three things. You don't damage me. I don't want you to damage me. I want you to find favor in your eyes. And why is that? Listen to this. I don't know if you can relate to this. Hopefully none of us can, but a person who's afflicted with these three things. Can you imagine someone with sores all over their body? Who wants to be around such a person? But we also know poor people who, hopefully we're full of chesed and love, that we can handle poor people. But in the real world out there, poor people are shunned. Who wants to be, you go to, a fancy dinner and the guy's not dressed properly and he doesn't have the proper etiquette. You kind of, you wonder what he's doing there. Listen to the words. Ki adam hanikla b'gimel, someone who's afflicted with these three things, which we said were blindness, tsuras, leprosy, or poverty. Harehu muksa mikol adam. The word muksa has two connotations. It either means pushed away, let's say like almost, what's that word I'm looking for? Like almost like excommunicated from society, right? You're pushed away, which obviously a mitzora, someone who has leprosy certainly is, but impoverished and blind, or in this case, if we're talking about, a healthy body or having money or Torah. So, or muksa could be from the other word of to be disgusted, ketza. So the question is, either way, you're pushed aside from society. Mikol adam bizman shenikla begufo, at the time that you're afflicted with your body, gam bizman shenikla bemono, and even at times when people are impoverished, az kol achei rash sana'oho. Then what happens is the person who's poor is hated. V'chein hu omer, obviously that's not the Torah way, but that's the way of the world. It says in Proverbs chapter 22, verse 1, a name is chosen above great wealth, good favor over silver and gold. Really, Rashi says, a good name above great wealth, good favor is chosen. Okay, but it's still high up there. People do appreciate money. And what about Torah? So it's written about Torah, v'yalet chen. Also in Proverbs chapter 5, verse 19, a lovely hind and a graceful mountain goat, her breast will satisfy you at all times. You shall always be intoxicated with her love. This is talking about wisdom. It's talking about the Torah. In fact, we talk about having chidushim, novel ideas. We get ecstatic. We have a mind-blowing moment when we see something new in the Torah that we haven't seen before. Right? Our souls connect to it. It's a love, and it's intoxicating love. But it specifically says here about this ayelet chen. It happens to be, and forgive me, there are women listening. It's of a sexual nature that the husband of this female has such enjoyment every time he is with her, because her hips are so narrow that it feels like it's the first time. So that's a reference over there. V'kasher shebo olav malachim amru. And when the angels came back and they responded, Hine hu holek likratecha, that guess what? He's coming with 400 men. He's coming to you. He's coming to you. As takin atzma legimel dvarim. That's when Yaakov understood he needs to establish or set up these three barriers. These three, as we said, doron, which are gifts, tefillah, which is prayer, and set up for war, which was splitting up the family. Doron keneged mammon. We understand the gifts he gave. That was parallel to the money. Shlo yaziku b'mono. He doesn't want to be afflicted with poverty, so he gave him a gift. It's a trick. It's, what are you going to call it? A scheme. It's what he needed to do to counter the wish that he didn't have money, so he tried to win favor by giving money. The milchama, that would be parallel to his body, right? It was parallel that he was coming to damage his body. That's what you do in war. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do, right? I don't know if Israel learned that lesson, but when you go to war, you finish them off, right? Okay. And what about tefillah? Hainu keneged shim yavola ziku b'torato. The idea of tefillah is actually related to Torah. That this is parallel, that he's coming to damage, to afflict my Torah. Like it says in Psalms 32 verse 6. Where's that on the source sheet? I think it's actually 7. No, it's number 32. It's 32:6. It's source number 32. And we're going to deal with this verse. This is the last paragraph, so hang in there. Azos yispaleh kol chasid le'esim limtzo. The verse says, "For let every pious man pray to you at a time." Remember, we're trying to plug in Torah, and the word, right, in Hebrew, al zos. We're going to see the word zos is referring to Torah. Yispaleh kol chasid alecha, and also le'es matzo. The time is to be found. Also, Torah is a mitzvah. It's a find. It's like when you walk down the street and you find a gold bar. Wow! Right? You're learning the Torah. It's like amazing. It's a mitzvah. Then last part of the verse, Rak l'shetef mayim Rabbi molav lo yagiu, that the prayer is that the flood of vast waters shouldn't overcome, they shouldn't reach him. Let's just see what the Yakar has to say about this. And he says, we're on Peiches, the second to the top line. What does it mean, le'es matzo? The word, this is Torah. The word matzo, it's a mitzvah. It's a find. And that's what it also means when it says, al zos yispalel. When it says, regarding this you shall pray, ein zos ella Torah, as we know, Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 44. We say it every morning. Read the Torah. Right, we hold up the Torah. This is the teaching which Moses set before the children of Israel. Zois HaTorah shetzam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael. Right, so Zois is Torah. What about tefillah? Okay, the word, if you look in the art scroll Siddur, it says the word tefillah is a language of plili. What is Israel? Israel was given to Yaakov as another name, because he strove, he fought with God and won. And we have plenty of Jews who have, tainas, Holocaust survivor, whatever. We're here to, like Abraham, he fought with God. If you can only find 50 or 45 or 40 righteous people. See, Noah did not fight with God. He just did everything God wanted. That's why he's a non-Jew. He's a Gentile. The Jew is Yisrael, is to fight with God. Also means straight to God, no interference, no intermediary, but it also means that you strove, you fought with God. Listen to this. What is tefillah? The art scroll Siddur says, Litpalel is from plili. Plili is a serious investigation to high crime. But it's reflexive. We do it. When we pray, we're meditating on our desires, that's future, our past, our present, where we're holding, what we did wrong, where we should straighten ourselves out. Okay, listen to this. He says, Tefillah is lashon plilit, shadavar plilut im koinoi. It's called like a legal dispute. To have a legal dispute with your maker, your creator. Sha'amar, and what's the conversation like? Im yavata mimeni Torah mitzvahs. Yaakov is saying, or King David, whoever, if, God forbid, you should take away from me the Torah and mitzvahs, im kain, mata'aseh l'shimcha gadol. What's going to happen to your great name? Shem mechula ala yedei zeh. That if the Torah is taken away from me, your name will be a disgrace. Just think about what Moses says. When God says, I'm going to wipe out the Jewish people, I'm going to start just with you. He says, he said a lot of things, but one of the things is, what do you think the Egyptians are going to say? Right? You're going to wipe out the Jews to die in the desert? The whole thing was a big Chil Hashem. Your name would not be made great if you do that. Had a conversation. So he says that's what it means. Going back to that verse that I said was very cryptic. V'hikani aim or aim al banim. We said the aim is talking about Torah, the mother. Don't abandon the Torah of your mother. Sheremez l'Torah mitzvahs, that he was afraid that the Torah would be erased. That's what it means. He's going to hit the aim al banim, the mother, on the children, as we mentioned. And then also, when Yaakov says, you said, Heitiv, Eitiv, that you're going to only improve the situation, Ume'ayin eska l'toivat elu, how am I, Yaakov, going to have a good situation if you're mivatu mimeni Torah mitzvahs? All good only comes from Torah mitzvahs. And that's why he says in verse 11, chapter 32, verse 11, are we on the last page yet? I know it's here somewhere. Let's see. Anybody find it? Number 37. So Yaakov says, Ketonti mikol chasadim. I have become small from all the kindness and from all the truth that you have rendered your servant. For with my staff I crossed the Jordan, and now I have become two camps. So, Ketonti mikol chasadim. I have become small. What does that mean? Ki kabalti kol zechuyoti kaperish Rashi. Rashi says, which unfortunately I don't have here. I do. Look on the very top of page 6. See, he knows that he's standing in good when he left Israel, and God promised him that I'm going to be with you, and therefore, great, but perhaps I messed up somewhere. In other words, how much confidence is never be so confident in yourself until the day of your death. So Rashi says, I have become small. My merits have diminished because of the kindness and the truth you have rendered me. In other words, God has given me so much, I owe him. He doesn't owe me anything. I am so indebted to him, I owe him. When you owe somebody, you don't know if you're going to be able to pay up, but you're in debt. So he feels indebted. He says, God has done so much more for me than I've done for him. Therefore, I fear lest I become sullied with sin since the time you promised me. Even though you promised me, but maybe since then I, failed. And therefore, it will cause me to be delivered into Esav's hand. Perhaps I am not living up to the standards I should. And that's what Rashi says. V'umavar l'mevi. This is understood to those who understand it. V'chein inyan hadoron. Remember the idea of giving gifts. That was mentioned a kapara panav b'mincha. The idea was to either to appease or to be forgiven. Now the word panav b'mincha as a gift, but the word panav is used. Ein panav ella oisher. The word panav is referring to wealth. How do we know? It says in the Midrash Tanchuma, based on a pasuk on Genesis 41:56. We're like just a few sources to the end. Now the famine, this is back in Egypt. The famine spread over all the face of the land. Yosef, I don't know if you're aware of this. Yosef, we know that he predicted there was going to be 7 good years, and he told and suggested and advised Pharaoh, collect everything, put it in the storehouses, so that when the next 7 years of famine hit, you'll have what to feed the people. So once the famine began, the famine became so bad that it was over all the face of the land. What does it mean over? What we think it means, okay, it means like, physically on the face of the earth. No, it was from the rich. Once the rich, in other words, you don't open the storehouses until the rich don't have, right? I'm talking about the corrupt society here, this is Egypt. So basically the people were suffering, but they didn't open the storehouses until it affected the rich. That's what it means. Now the famine spread over the face of the earth. Look at Rashi. Rashi says, who are the face of the earth? These are the rich. So let's go back to the Yakar, last 2 lines. Elu ha'ashirim, these are the rich. Meaning to say, the oisher shu lohat akrav akapar b'minchachi, that the wealth that he was lit up with, or he was chasing after, was basically as an appeasement as a gift. Now I just want to summarize these last 5 lines because this goes on and on and on for pages, but if you just read it. After the fact that Yaakov was not affected by these 3 things, Chazal say, V'yavo Yaakov shalim. Look in verse, it's Genesis 33:18. It's number 39, it's the last source. It says, Yaakov came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan when he came. But look in the Hebrew, V'yavo Yaakov shalem. Yaakov came home complete. He came home with peace, but complete. Complete in what way? Shalom begufo, shalom b'mamano, shalom b'toroto. After he left Lavan's house, he came back complete, perfect, with his body, with his money, and his Torah. He didn't lose any of that. Hu keneged shayim mepachad pen yiziko Esav b'gimel elu. And these are parallel to what we mentioned. These are the things that he feared that Esav may affect him in. So look, I don't know what you got out of it. We discussed a lot. Hopefully you learned a little bit of Hebrew. Hopefully you learned some basic principles of Judaism. How important Torah is, how important it is to follow the Torah. And you wouldn't have learned what we learned tonight had you not been at a Torah class. So I hope that... Can't hear you?
With cholent.
With cholent. Yes. Don't forget, if you come on time, you get to have some cholent. Anyway, B'ezrat Hashem, again, if you want the English sheets, send me an email. My email is on the webpage down below. You can donate. It's a big mitzvah, not just to donate for the soldiers that are converting. This is Tefillin, the big Tefillin drive that we've been doing for the last 2 years. But also, Yiboneh, we have a new building, we have a budget, and this is our first year. Now we know what our budget cost us. And it's all written up on our webpage, and you can be a partner. There are bookshelves all around me with already some labels. We're going to do the books as well. There are sets of books here that cost thousands of shekels, and one could make a dedication to a loved one or for a good purpose. And with that, anyway, we will be meeting next week. Am I right? When's Hanukkah start? Yeah, so we're next week we're meeting, and we're having a big Hanukkah party here Tuesday night, Rabbi Breitowitz. So you're all invited to that. And no, next Sunday we're going to Rabbi Singer's debate. Most of us are going to see Rabbi Singer debate, a Christian missionary. In the meantime, I'm going to just say to everyone, have a great week. And I always say this now, it's the winter, that we pray it should rain in the right amount, the right time, and the right places. And you know what I mean. We'll see you next week.